All, however, went along smoothly. The emperor included in the official announcement of the plebiscite among the preparatory ceremonies. A single article in the Moniteur was written on this almost abandoned and forgotten subject. On the 6th of Brumaire, November 27th, the Senatus Consultum of the 16th of Brumaire, November 7th, was inserted. In this was recorded the results of the voting. The French people had accepted the proposition of the Senate by 3 million votes against 2,000. The imperial dignity is hereditary in the direct, natural, legitimate, and adapted descent from Napoleon Bonaparte, and in the direct, natural, and legitimate descent from Joseph and Louis Bonaparte, as is regulated by the Act of the Constitution of the Empire of the date of Floreal, 28th of the year 12, on the 10th of Brumaire, December 1st. The eve of the consecration, the Senate went in a body to the Tuileries. They were ushered into the throne room and presented to the emperor by the Grand Elector. The object of this was to announce the result of the plebiscite, which could have been done in a few words since the imperial government had been in existence for 6 months. But Francois de Neufchâteau, who presided, was determined to pronounce the inauguratory discourse, which was feeble, though certain of his words, now spoken too late, were a useful remainder of the principles of the Constitution. Thus, when he attested that the right to vote, especially as regards to the fundamental laws, is the first attribute of the sovereign power of the people, when he affirmed that the emperor held his power only from the sovereign people, when he proclaimed that the republic existed and that the object of the plebiscite had been to introduce into the government by a single man principles preservative of the interests of all, and to give to the republic the strength of the republic, when he claimed for the republicans whose patriotism has been the most zealous and imperious the right to consider themselves the stoutest supporters of the throne, when he announced, defined, and commenced on the constitutional oath, every term of which expressed some essential condition of the agreement between the emperor and people, he might by all this have once been able to inculcate a useful lesson and a necessary warning, had not his speech been somewhat marred by an excess of rhetoric. But it was too late. The emperor's answer showed the distance he had traveled in the last 6 months. It displayed the influence of the papal consecration, and how the democratic right which had set him up was now turned into providential, not far removed from a divine right. He said, "I'm at the throne to which I have been called by the unanimous wish of the Senate, the people, and the army. My heart full with the mighty destiny of that people whom, from the midst of camps, I have been the first to salute with the name of great. All my thoughts from my youth up have been turned upon them, and I here declare that my thoughts and labors today are concerned only with the happiness or unhappiness of my people. My descendants will alone guard this throne. They shall be the foremost soldiers of the army in the field, and in sacrificing their lives for the defense of their country. As administrators, they will never forget that contempt of the law and decay of social order are the only results of the weakness and indecision of princes. In this there was no word of duties towards the nation and the revolution, not one word of the duties which the democracy had imposed on the chief whom she had been pleased to elect, and over whom the people still remained sovereign. Sovereign, the people? It was my people. And then allusion to Louis XVI, which could not fail to be remarked, and which connected the new with the fallen dynasty, putting them upon an equal footing. It was no longer a republic with an imperator or a Caesar at its head. It was a monarchy which its inheritors would long possess, provided that they avoided the faults of their predecessors, the Bourbons. At present, it was by the grace of God that Napoleon was emperor of the French. It was not only a formula which had changed, but the whole point of view. From 6 o'clock in the evening until midnight on the 10th of Brumaire, salvos of artillery discharged hourly announced the solemnity of the morrow, and every salvo Bengal lights shone on all the elevated parts of Paris. The theaters were open free, and bands of music paraded in the streets, playing fanfares. During the night, the palace courtyard and the terrace along the length of the castle were sanded. 57 cartloads of river sand were spread over the muddy patches. It has been necessary to pay the work people whatever price they asked on account of the scarcity of labor. This was 3.25 francs a day and 4 francs at night, which was unheard of. It snowed, but did not thaw. At 8 o'clock, the snow stopped and the cold returned. Before daybreak, the deputations appointed by the Senatus Consultum to be present at the taking of the oath assembled at the Palais de Justice, the halls of which were lighted by 429 powerful earthenware lamps, each 6 inches in diameter. At 7 o'clock, these deputations set out on foot under the escort of the Parisian Guard to Notre Dame. At the same hour, the deputations from the land and sea forces, as well as from the National Guard, were drawn up on the Place Dauphine. These were of two kinds: the official deputations of about 5,000 men under the command of Colonel Curto, to whom is entrusted their management, discipline, and organization, and the voluntary deputations from the Guards of Honor, which had been formed during the journeys of the first consul and the emperor through the different departments. 233 men, almost all of them horse guards, who had come to Paris to show their loyalty, and at their own expense they were marshaled under Colonel Beaumont, aide-de-camp to the governor of Paris, and were drawn up in 2 sections, one commanded by Colonel Cousin-Comartin of Boulogne-sur-Mer, the other by Colonel de Marmont of Brussels. Part only of these deputations were to enter the church, to whom were added the deputations of the special voluntary corps, such as veteran guards of honor of the Senate, the survivors of the Royal Petite. The rest would line the route. At 8 o'clock, the great state bodies departed from the respective palaces: the Senate, the Council of State, the Legislative Body, the Tribunate, each body carriages under the escort of 100 horsemen. The Court of Cassation were on foot with an escort of 80-foot soldiers around Notre Dame and inside the church. The confusion was terrible. Detachments of 6 battalions of grenadiers, the chasseurs of the guard, had since 5 o'clock taken up their positions at the Archbishop's palace and the cathedral, but the officers took not the slightest heed of the civilians, or rather one of the civilians, Fontaine, the architect, who was on the spot at their arrival, for no master of the ceremonies had bestirred himself, none even of the 29 commissioners, who were paid a louis each. At 6 o'clock, the doors are open, and a large number of those invited, whose impatient curiosity had led them thither before daybreak, had managed to push in through the doorways on handing their tickets to the 92 ticket collectors, who were each paid 9 francs. As soon as they entered, they walked about all over the stands and hindered the work people, who were still busy, and for more than an hour and a half the greatest disorder reigned in the church. It was with the greatest difficulty that Fontaine managed to induce the military authorities to take the palace of the Liabed, masters of the ceremonies, and to establish order at the entrances. But outside there was no Fontaine. The prefect of police had closed the Place du Parvis to carriages other than those of the 3 trains of the Pope, the Emperor, and the Arch-Chancellor Dalberg. The streets leading to the Place du Parvis were blocked by the crowd, those invited who, after daybreak, were unable to get to the church. A large number of ladies of the highest rank were obliged, in spite of the lightness of their attire and low-necked dresses, to descend there at the Place de Justice at the entrance to the Rue de la Barrerie, and were thronged by a scarcely respectable crowd in the winding lanes which even 60 years ago wound between the old houses of the city. They were frightened, with some reason, when the Court of Cassation appeared in the midst of its escort, and avarice warmth was once more awakened in these venerable magistrates. They opened their ranks to the fair disconsolates, who entered the cathedral under the shelter of their flame-colored togas.